Comes down to one of my biggest regrets from when I was 18 years old, and this is probably the biggest one that I have from when I was 18 years old in my early 20s. Going to college, that was most definitely my biggest regret. I always say I don't really have any regrets in life, but I do have a few things that if I had the opportunity to go back and change, I definitely would have changed them. Now, before we get into the video, if you guys are interested in fitness, health, travel, overall growth content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you guys can get updated every time I drop new content. Also, if you guys want to join the community, go to patreon.com/growththroughcalisthenics. It's $5 to become a member. I have more exclusive content on there about topics that I don't necessarily want to go too deep into on YouTube. Now, one of my biggest regrets from when I was around 18 to my early 20s was being financially irresponsible. So, back when I was 18 years old, 21, 22, 23 years old, they didn't have YouTube. There wasn't as much of a resource to get financially literate. So for me, I was financially illiterate back when I was around that age. So when it came down to opening up credit cards, when it came down to spending money on frivolous material items, when it came time to invest my money in something that might help me gain something for the future, I just didn't know anything about that. I didn't know anything about the stock market. My mode of thinking, and where I'm from, the mode of thinking is like the stock market is almost like gambling. It's something that you just shouldn't even mess around with. Nobody in my household was an investor when it came down to stocks and different things of that nature. Nobody in my family was really into it. None of my friends were into it. None of my friends' family was into it. So I just didn't know anything about investments. I didn't really know anything. I knew about like real estate, but my mentality back then, and a lot of people's mentality still to this day, is that it takes a lot of money to even get into real estate. So for me, investing my money into something at the age of 18 years old, 21 years old, 23 years old, it was just something that was just completely foreign to me. And it's something that I wish that I could go back and kind of explain to my younger self, especially when it comes down to credit. Because I remember I was opening up credit cards and just spending money frivolously back when I was around 18 years old, even 21 years old. I remember going to the club and putting drinks on the credit card, or opening up Macy's cards and getting outfits and buying Jordans and going out to eat, doing all types of dumb shit. A lot of times when it comes down to financial literacy and just financial responsibility, we can pick up a lot of bad habits from our younger years that can actually carry over into our, adulthood and carry on to even, right now. I would say I still have some habits, financial habits, that I actually need to clean up right now. I've definitely gotten better when it comes down to staying organized, keeping track of my money, budgeting my money, all this type of stuff. But that's something when I was younger that I just did not have really any sense of. And I think a lot of people around that age of 18, 19, all the way up to like their mid-20s can be extremely financially irresponsible. So that's one thing that I definitely would take back then. The second thing that I would say that I would want to change from when I was in my early 20s, maybe 18 years old, early 20s, was I wouldn't have taken my relationships that seriously, and I probably wouldn't have let myself get into a lot of these long-term relationships. I can remember I had a girlfriend from about the time of 18 years old, maybe all the way until I was 22. And me and her were pretty serious. I was really close with her family. She was really close with my family. My mom loved her. My mom wanted me to get married to her. But for me, it's just like, at 18 years old, you literally have to be exploring, figuring out exactly what you want. Because one thing I can vividly remember from the time when I was 18, when I was in that relationship, was that I was always wondering what else was out there. I loved my girlfriend back, thought it was puppy love, but I loved my girlfriend back when I was like 18, 21 years old, 22 years old. But I was always curious. I was always, I was in college, so I was always seeing different chicks at school, and different chicks at school was feeling me, and I always felt like I had to just, be the good guy and, not experiment. So I was with one girl pretty much all throughout college until like maybe my last year of school. And then I was single and kind of got to play the field a little bit. But I wish I would have taken the time early to play the field. That way I wouldn't have spent a lot of time in my mid-20s to early 30s going out tail chasing. You know what I mean? I think it's more important for a young man to tail chase when he's like 18 years old, 19 years old, maybe to like 22, 23, 24. And that way you can get it out of your system early, and then you can start focusing a little bit more once you get to about 24, 25 years old. And then you can start building, and by that time you already know what type of qualities you want in a woman. You already know what type of things that you're into physically. You know, we all have our different types. It might be you might be attracted to a woman with a Coke bottle figure. Another guy might be attracted to a woman with a slim frame. You know, we all have our preferences, and I think when you're younger, that's something that you're kind of learning, and you're kind of figuring, you know, what you like physically, and also what type of woman is compatible with you on a mental level, personality traits that you kind of like and that kind of work well with your personality. So these are things that you kind of need to experiment with at a younger age. That's the reason why I'm not really a proponent of young men getting into these serious relationships and, you know, maybe their first love or their first relationship, you know, taking that overly serious. Because at the end of the day, most of the time when you're 18 years old, all the way up to maybe 24, 25 years old, the woman who you're with at that age, more than likely 5 years from then, you probably are not even gonna barely remember her name, because you're more than likely not gonna be with that woman. That's the rule pretty much. Now there is exceptions. You know, I've seen young people who, you know, found their significant other that they ended up marrying when they were in college or maybe slightly after college, but I don't think that's very common. So for myself, I would go back in time and kind of tell myself that you're taking this relationship a little bit too serious. You need to work on yourself. You need to spend some time by yourself, learn how to be alone, number one. Also learn how to be single is another thing, because that's something that probably took me, I probably would say I didn't truly learn how to be single until maybe a few years ago, or maybe probably a couple years ago, and I'm almost 37 years old. Because, you know, if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know, I've, you know, been transparent in the past and said that I've always kind of been somebody who's always been in these relationships, like these, you know, 1.5 to 3 year relationships. And a lot of times what I've ended up doing is I've ended up cheating and lying and doing that type of thing. At least up until about the age of 32, I was doing it a lot. And, you know, that's just something that I really don't condone at this age and at this maturity level, I would say. Not even necessarily this age. It's just that you have to learn and you have to grow. And being somebody who's always lying and always trying to juggle different women, it really takes away from your personal growth. It really takes away from your self-development. And honestly, it's just a terrible practice to get into, is lying. Number one, you don't even want to start getting into the habit of making little quote-unquote white lies or small lies, because those lies lead to big lies. Once you start feeling comfortable making small lies, you're going to start feeling comfortable just being an out-and-out pathological liar. So these are things that you really don't want to get into a practice of. And again, like I've said on different other videos, I don't necessarily think that it's the worst thing in the world to have multiple women if you're at that stage in your life where you can handle it. But you have to be upfront and honest about it with your main woman, or, you know, your main women, or whatever it may be. You have to be, you know, transparent about the fact that you want to live that, you know, multiple women life, that polygyny life, or whatever you might want to call it. You know what I mean? And also, I don't think that just having multiple women just for, you know, sexual reasons is necessarily the reason to have multiple women. Yes, it has to be something bigger than that. I just don't believe in just being willy-nilly with your sexual energy. So the number 3 thing that I would go back and change when I was about 18 years old to my early 20s, mid-20s maybe even, is I would really get serious about fitness. I would really get serious about working out. I would really get serious about my health. And I'm not saying that it's one of those things where it's 100%, you know, mandatory at that young age that you need to be super disciplined and super strict about your diet and super strict about your training, because, you know, we all go through our phases of, you know, partying, kicking it, you know, eating BS foods or whatever. And, you know, to a certain extent, I think that we need to live and we need to learn a little bit. But I think there's something to being consistent with your diet, consistent with your exercise regimen. I think it really has a lot of benefits on the mental and the spiritual side. You know, it's not really something that you can kind of put into words, but you do get a lot of mental clarity from, you know, being in prime physical shape or eating the right types of foods. Because, you know, on the opposite end of the spectrum, when you're eating a lot of BS foods and you're not getting movement and you're not feeling good physically, a lot of times that can lead to you not feeling good mentally as well, and also not feeling good spiritually as well. So this is what I do. I'm super heavy into calisthenics. I'm super heavy into staying fit. And this is something that I'm extremely passionate about now. And I think, you know, as you build up yourself physically, you start to build up yourself mentally and spiritually as well. So I highly recommend that if you're in the age group of, you know, 18 years old to your early 20s, that you start a workout regimen up. And if you guys need some help with that, you guys can go to my website, book a free consultation with me, number one. Number two, I have workout programs ready to go for beginners to people who have athletic experience in the past, maybe have a little bit of workout experience, but no calisthenics experience. I have 8-week program for absolute beginners and a 12-week program for people who, you know, have a little bit of experience in the athletic realm. All right, guys, so here's the last thing that I want to say when it comes down to one of my biggest regrets from when I was 18 years old. And this is probably the biggest one that I have from when I was 18 years old in my early 20s. Going to college, that was most definitely my biggest regret, because, you know, even though I earned an athletic scholarship my freshman year, I ended up transferring schools my sophomore year, and I ended up going to a school pretty close by. But regardless of whatever it is, I wasn't on any type of scholarship or anything like that. And I ended up taking out loans, and I ended up getting some student debt, just like a lot of people do. And fortunately, I actually didn't rack up as much student debt as a lot of other people. But the things that I learned when I was in university are things that I really could have taught myself. Especially what I went to school for was radio and television, and, you know, it was broadcasting, electronics, communications, and arts was actually the name of the degree. And the things that I learned in that program, which I didn't learn too much of because there wasn't really too many good professors in that group. I probably had a couple decent ones. But the things that I learned in that educational system, I really could have taught myself. I've taught myself since getting out of college how to edit videos. I've taught myself about cameras. I've taught myself a number of things when it comes down to video production that I did not know when I was in university. And at the end of the day, when it comes down to something like video production, technology, anything like that, it's always changing. So you're always going to have to keep teaching yourself new things, and you're always going to have to keep updating yourself with the time. So getting a base from a university might be a decent thing. Now, I honestly would recommend any 18-year-old, if you're not going to college for some type of STEM thing, or you're going to school to become a lawyer or a doctor or something like that, I honestly would recommend not going to college. And I know that's probably going to be controversial, but I'm not a believer in this educational system at all. I think this educational system is extremely flawed. They only teach to a certain type of learner. You know, when I was coming up in high school, when I was coming up in school in general, middle school, they put me in special ed. And if you guys watch my channel and just kind of see the way, you know, I'm pretty sure you would agree that I'm not a special ed type of person. I was in that special ed program all the way until I graduated high school. And it's ironic that I was in special ed and in AP classes, which are like honors classes, at the same time. It doesn't even really make sense. So the education system in this country is extremely flawed. I wouldn't recommend going to university. I think it's a waste of money. I think it's a waste of time. I think that you can spend your time around that age kind of figuring out what you want to do. Honestly, I would recommend from the ages of 18 to 22 years old, if it's possible, travel the world. Or if you can, get some type of certification, maybe an apprenticeship, start earning a little bit of money, and then maybe you'll start kind of figuring out exactly what you want to do with this world, maybe in this world, and you'll start to figure out what your real interests are. So I highly recommend that if you're around that graduating high school age, or even if you're in university and you've been in the system for a year or two, if it's not working out for you, just get out of that shit and start something new. Start something else. Maybe you want to start your own business, or start studying, start, teaching yourself certain things. I remember when I was younger, and I would teach myself certain things about working on cars or whatever it may be. Teach myself how to cut hair. That's actually what I actually wanted to do when I got out of high school. When I got out of high school, I wanted to be a barber. I was always cutting my own hair. I always made sure my hair was fly. I even used to cut some of my friends' hair. And I wanted to go to barber school when I got out of high school, but my parents was like, nah, hell no, you're going to take this athletic scholarship. I had an athletic and academic scholarship. And it was like, nah, you're going to take this. So I ended up taking that. Obviously, when you're around 18 years old, you're a little bit more susceptible to peer pressure, and especially more susceptible to parental pressure, which is probably the biggest pressure that you're going to have around that age. But I highly recommend that you do your own thing. If you feel in your heart that college is not for you, you don't necessarily need to do that. That's something I really wish I would have never got myself into. And I feel like, you know, maybe I could have started this travel journey a little bit earlier. Maybe it might have taken me, you know, to some other place. Maybe I would have been living in a different country, you know, from the age of 23, 24 years old. Who knows? But one more thing I want to say before I get out of here is that don't let other people tell you what it is to be true to yourself. The concept of keeping it real is something that I really think is something that can be extremely toxic. You know, I've been told in times that I'm not keeping it real because I'm from this place, I should be doing that, or because I'm black, I should be doing this, you know. And a lot of times it's from people who don't look like me or not even from the area that I'm from, and they're telling me that I'm not keeping it real. So don't listen to anybody telling you not keeping it real. And honestly, even people who's from the place that you're from is going to tell you not keeping it real. I remember when I was out living in Japan and I had a Japanese girlfriend at the time. I was doing my thing, making money with my Airbnb business. I had some friends, you know, still my homeboys to this day, but I think it was just more of an ignorance thing. And they were telling me like, oh yeah, you too good to fuck with a black girl and live in the United States, and you had to go out to Japan and you fucking with a Japanese chick and you making your money out. It's like, man, I'm not trying to hear all that shit. I'm gonna date whoever I want to date. I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. I'm gonna live wherever I want to live. If I choose to be a marine biologist, I'm gonna do that. If I choose to, you know, do whatever other type of thing for a living, I'll do that. If I want to, you know, I've worked in the airline industry for a long time. If I want to do that, I'll do that, man. I'm gonna do me. Worry about you. You know, I like the saying that what you eat don't make me shit. That's an old Jay-Z line from one of his albums back in the day. So that's something that I feel like is good to kind of live by. What you eat don't make me shit. But anyways, guys, if you guys have anything that you want me to touch on, any video topics that you guys want me to touch on, leave that in the comment section. Again, join the Patreon community, patreon.com/growthroughcalisthenics. I'm gonna have a plethora of videos on there, a plethora of topics that I don't talk about on YouTube. With YouTube, I more so want to stick to probably the calisthenics and fitness stuff, and maybe a little bit of these kind of like growth talking points. But as far as, oh yeah, one other thing, I have another channel with Kwame. If you guys seen my videos I've done with Kwame about the Transformation Club, we started our own channel about travel, growth, making money online, different things. That's called Growth Politics. I'll leave that link in the description as well. But anyways, guys, I don't want to blabber on too much. This video's already been long as hell. Hope everybody's having a great day out there. I'll holler at you guys later.